start of the third session, and so I just feel obligated to now share with you goals, which I hope you understand what a goal is, and remind ourselves that we are trying to change our lives. At least I'm trying to change your lives. I hope you are cooperating. Teaching is an authority role. It needs to be, implemented under accountability to the master, to our king, the head of his church. We want to plan class periods that are aimed at changing the students' beliefs and behavior. Based on that, we want to build classroom activities that aim toward that by teaching facts, the higher level of the flow of learning that support those changes. And then if we're students, disciples, which we all are, we would be eager and supportive of the teacher in his or her role, and we would then be aiming to make personal changes based on what we learn. Y'all good with those goals? They're still there. That's still what we're doing here. Okay. Back on Timothy again, if you want to go back to page 3, I guess it is, part of the assignment was to fill these in. We've now done the chapters. If you want to put in something to do with the outline, I think this is in here somewhere. This outline may be in your material somewhere anyway. But I did want to go through a little bit of a rapid kind of just a flyover of how you might start if you were teaching a course to start and figure out what your goals should be. Remember we said you start with the word and then you look at the student and you kind of meet in the middle thinking about what is appropriate, what they need and what you understand, what they understand, what you have time for. But I want to kind of show a little bit about how you might arrive at that. I'll put this up, but I was hoping you would do this. Those of you that did the lesson, your assignment, homework assignment last night, did you come up with some things in 2 Timothy 2 that you think would make good life-changing goals for your students? Would anybody like to share some of those just so we can think about it? Yes. First of all, tell us what's your age group, what's your class? Okay, adult class. Okay.
I thought that to consider the life of Christ and his death and what his resurrection and death means to us and live like that.
Okay. So have a deeper, awareness, conviction, faith in the resurrection, and think about that as the way we should live. Did you do that from the hymn? Did you zero in on the hymn? Because that's kind of there is the reference there in 2 Timothy 2.
No, it's just from verse 8, really.
Okay. I forget what verse 8 says. Okay. That's not the beginning of the hymn? Okay. Sorry. Guess I need to go back and study this more. That's a good one. Somebody else. Somebody with, yeah, good.
Our main aim in life should be to please Jesus.
Okay. And where would you get that from the text?
From verse 4, no soldier gets entangled in civilian pursuits since his aim is to please the one who is.
Okay. All right. That's pretty general. We're going to please Jesus. Let's go a little bit more specific just for fun. What would that include not doing if, using that text? So what does that mean? Our main aim is pleasing Jesus, so what?
You don't get too entangled with.
There you go. So there's all kinds of things that are not, I hate this expression, but you don't have to live with me, so in and of themselves, I hate that. There's nothing in the world that's in and of itself. But in any case, skip over that. It may not be sinful explicitly, but if it takes us away from our service, it's wrong. It's not pleasing to use your terminology. Great. Another one. Tell me the group. Yeah, Renita. What?
First graders.
Great. Yeah.
Recently taught. So to become vessels of honor, and in verses 21,
Okay.
21, which means to flee the youthful passions and.
Okay. They probably wouldn't know youthful passions,
Right.
but still.
Right, but just to teach them that they are a vessel.
Sure. And some things we do make us dirty.
Yeah.
Not fit for you. I like the vessel for the kids, right? I mean, I'm already imagining, what do you call them, manipulables, something that's clean and then it's dirty, and I'm not drinking out of that one, or something like that. You could imagine that, and then making the connection to things that we do in our life, and there's dirt all over us as a result of that. Not that it can't be cleansed, but it's not useful while it's dirty. And yeah, that'd be a great lesson. Let's have some more. These are great. Anybody else? Yeah, Norm?
College or adult,
College age?
avoid wasteful YouTube rabbit trails.
Okay. Right. There's an ambitious goal. And where did you get that from in the text?
Verse 23, have nothing to do with foolish, ignorant controversies, you know they breed quarrels.
Yeah, y'all hear that? In fact, tomorrow, and when I try to teach this chapter, which I guess I need to study it some more, but I want us to struggle a little bit over what is he referring to that's relevant to us. And there's a great example, I think, that is wasteful time. We spend our time on wasteful things that have no edification value, and probably the opposite, but yeah. More, these are great. I mean, yes.
For like fourth and fifth grade, being able to explain those metaphors, like how are we like a soldier, how are we like a farmer, like what's his point he's making? Because when you go down in verse 24, he talks about not being quarrelsome, but being kind to everyone. So like, we don't just want kids to get the idea of we're like a soldier.
We're fighters.
Yeah.
Okay,
We're fighting
you're
against
getting
them.
into my lesson. But that's not one of my goals. That's kind of one of my objectives, which is, I think, a measurable one, which is, can you explain what it is about the farmer that Paul is using to illustrate? I think I can have the class learn that in class. But then also an objective, and once again, it's one of those like define Gnosticism. If you can repeat my explanation, you're good to go. But I want to reconcile the military imagery with this gentleness that you've noticed there. Y'all know what I'm talking about if you've looked at the chapter. How do you reconcile that? We're fighting, we're running, and yet we're told to do all these non-warlike things to our brethren. Those are my objectives, of course, only because I mean that you'll be able to repeat this or find it in the text or something like that. Any more? These are...
Tie that also into the whole vessel thing.
You could, right. Right. So I can already tell you're designing your class period. Now, what we've done is we've kind of, remember we said, which side is it? Here's the student, is that right? I got the sides right. And here's the Bible text. We've kind of worked backward a little bit, but we mostly said this way, how do they match? What is in this text that's really important for people to learn about? Like wasting time with the frivolous things as a teenager or a college kid or something. I think that's a problem, and I think you do too. And you said, this text right here has something to do with that. And it has a good metaphor, and it's something that we could study. So you see how we're working both sides to the middle. I hope you can see that. It's a biblical study. I want you to understand that you're not just giving advice. It's going to be rooted in the text of the Bible, and with Timothy's specific personal issues and the problems that exist in Ephesus and other churches. Okay. All right, that's really good. What I did, just for fun, and I'm not going to give these to you, but I just said, okay, if I went through 2 Timothy 2 and said what might be some applications out there, and just down the verses, on the left-hand side. And I think you could do that as a preliminary reading of the text. Okay, I've got to teach this. I got 2 or 3 weeks to prepare. My first step might be to take a version of the Bible and then another version, maybe side by side, maybe one with the majority text and the other with the critical text, like a New King James and a Legacy Standard, and read them, and then just make this list on the right-hand side. You see that? And there's more. There's a second page. There's lots of, and these are all potential applications. I can't do them all, but as I have this as my rich background, I can begin to pick the ones that will be the most needed based on my knowledge of the students. Okay? I'm just illustrating the process here. All right. Let's think about the sequence of lesson preparation. I'm going to go pretty fast. We're not going to go through all of this, and these are kind of obvious. There probably are other ways or alternate tools or something, but this is what I'm going to suggest. If you're assigned a text and you're asked to teach that, here's some things you should do. First of all, study the text. Big surprise, right? But the idea there is you're going to learn the facts. I call it the big picture context and the immediate context, meaning who wrote it? When in the Bible did it occur? Who's it written to? What are the issues and so on the outer, edges and then zero in more. And by the way, remember we talked about foundational knowledge? If you already know all that, you're done. You can make such rapid progress, because I know when this was written, right? It was written right at the end of Paul's life, after they had traveled together and so on. But what I'm doing, though, is I look and I like to outline the text. Does this pointer show up here? I'm down to the prepare an outline that has red words with it. And what I'm trying to do is in that process, looking to find the themes. This is one thing we do in our workshop with the guys, is we keep reading it and we keep iterating on the themes. That's a fun thing. I have some charts later if you want to see them, where I've shown the iterations of how we've kind of zeroed in. I'm going to give you the results of that work in just a minute. And then out of that, I think that this pointer, that's why he put this up here for me. Is that working? Yes. Okay. Although I can't. All right. So what I'm doing here is I'm working to discover themes. And I think if you're teaching a whole book over a period of time, you want those themes to be repeated over and over. In fact, I think they link to the goals, right? So I'll show you how that would work for the 1st and 2nd Timothy as we go. But let's go ahead to the next one. And then I think if you have time, you do additional research. And these are the rabbit holes. And I love this. This is, I could spend too much time doing this. And here's why I say that. And this is a rule of thumb. My dad used to say it. I never do it, but he was right. And that is, if you have 8 hours to prepare to teach that class, spend 4 doing this kind of thing. Spend another 4 planning how you're going to teach it. You see what I'm talking about? And as a teacher, I don't do that. What am I doing the night before? I'm reading another commentary, right? I'm not, instead of thinking, okay, what's a quiz? What's an exercise? What's a matching exercise we can do in the class? What's a group discussion? What's a case study that would just bring this to life and let people really feel like it was real? Y'all understand what I mean? They take time to do, but it's only 45 minutes, and you just need to be as efficient as you can. Come up with things that enhance learning, right? And all this extra stuff you're learning may not be all that useful in the moment. So you can do all that if you want. And then draft a list of goals. You saw my list for this course. I'll show you some that we arrived at for this particular class, 1 Timothy. We've done probably 4 or 5 other books too, but similar. It takes some time. It's fun to do it as a group. And then, let's see. Oh, yes. So here's what it would look like if I was told to teach 1st, 2nd Timothy, and this is what it would look like. After reading it through over and over, you say, what keeps getting repeated here? What is a foundation that Paul keeps basing his instructions to Timothy on? And the answer seems to be, Timothy, you have a duty. You've been called to do something. And nearly every chapter has something about that. Paul had it, and he transferred it to Timothy. Remember the initial charge and final charge? You'll go find him. And he ends by saying, listen, fulfill your ministry, preach the word. That's kind of the grand conclusion. So there's that. You see that theme all the way through. He talks about, develop your skills and give yourself fully, and all those things that seem like are part of this theme. Do what you've been called to do. So that's a key thing. A second theme that seems to appear over and over is hold the word. Now, the word is found in a lot of different ways, right? It's doctrine, healthy doctrine, sound doctrine, and truth and things like that, as opposed to fables and other things. And then the third theme is expect evil. Did you notice that through especially chapter 2? Paul calls out by name evil people, right? I'll say more about this tomorrow. Were these Christians or non-Christians that were the evil people, by the way? Well, save that for tomorrow. Think about it. Should we expect evil? Yes, that's another theme. I have trouble not teaching it. I'm just showing you, here are the themes. It probably took us 2 or 3 weeks to zero in on these. Culling, rewording, trying to combine some things together. So those are the themes. Now, are those the goals for the class? At the end of the course, the student will think or believe differently in this way. Well, almost, but not quite. Do you see that? So now there's one more step to say, okay, that's what Paul was taking Timothy and grabbing him by the collar and saying to him, this is what you need to do. Do you see how that might map into what am I wanting the students to do differently? It may not be quite the same. So here, this is an example, and every time I've done this with different groups of men, we come up with a slightly different answer, but here's an example. Do you think that would be a good course goal? People, commit to the roles God has given you to do your duty. Are you a dad? Are you a deacon? Are you a teacher? Are you a neighbor? What is your duty? Maybe write it down. Be serious about it. Yeah, I'm preaching again, I'm sorry. But you get the idea. Now I've mapped the theme of the letter into a goal, a change in behavior or belief. Hold to the word. How is your skill in handling the word, right? A workman that doesn't need to be ashamed. How deeply are you aware of it? And aware of the false teaching and the ability to answer and those kind of things. So a mastery of the word. And then expect and respond to evil, without being discouraged or ashamed or afraid, and using God's word. And then one more, which kind of combines a couple, which is prepare others. And that's kind of under the commission which Timothy was given. But you remember the commission was not just you do your job, but what else? You train others to do their job. Similarly, and there's this chain of teaching. In doing this, you'll save not only yourself, but those that hear you, right? The same commit to faithful men who will teach others also. So you kind of get the sense of that. The faith that was in your mother and grandmother, and I'm convinced is in you also. You see so I think, so in our class, when we were trying to teach, it was an adult class, we repeated these over and over. People, these are the life changes we want to make, learning from what Paul said to Timothy, right? We want to commit to the jobs that God's given us. We want to master the word as a tool to use in that. Now, is this the inspired list of themes in 1 Timothy? No. Is it the inspired list of goals? No, but for this class, knowing the students and kind of deciding we were going to go from the text, this is what we decided. I'm kind of summarizing the process. That made it look easy, but it's not. It's something you work at. Probably get some help on that as well. So we got the goals listed. This probably is easier for you. List factual objectives for your class period that you're going to teach. Maybe we'll get some examples of those. Draft a list of some questions that could be asked, maybe as an advanced assignment that you could put on a question sheet. Select some class period activities. I don't know when or how long they'll take, but here's some things I think might work. I like the idea of bringing the dirty, vase into the classroom. Okay, there's an idea. May not necessarily do it, may not have time. Maybe something else will pop into my head that's maybe more effective than that, but I'll list a bunch of things that I might do. I might have a matching exercise between the images and the lessons we're supposed to learn from the images, and let the kids work in the think, pair, share kind of thing. Y'all see that? I'm just thinking of activities that will accomplish the objectives that I've written, okay? And so on. So that's that. And then prepare a lesson sheet with those questions on it that you can hand out beforehand so the students can prepare. Then I plan the class period, and that's this schedule sheet that you have that you'll fill in. What am I going to do with my minutes, right? And then finally, practice, preparation, make the visuals. Used to be you had dry boards or blackboards or green boards. And it always helped me to actually draw out in advance what was I going to draw in the class. Practice it. But now there's PowerPoint, which unfortunately is like wearing handcuffs, as you can see up here. All right, so there we are. How are we doing on the objectives? I kind of rushed through number 8, but would you be able to list a sequence of preparation steps for an adult or high school or kids class? I just showed you what it is, right? Obviously, read the text, themes, goals, objectives, activities, preparation of a sheet, those kind of things. All right, so you may have figured all that out on your own. Now what I'd like to do is go really faster, and I'd like to just very quickly talk practically about some of the things that we do. Like we have handouts, like you're holding one in your hand. What was that about? Visual aids, things like that. Less material, different activities and how we should think about that, advantages and disadvantages of different kinds. Class planning sheet, you're going to demonstrate that by doing it in here, filling out that planning sheet. Okay, so then we're on the home stretch, and this will go faster. I feel like I'm boring everybody. This is just how I feel. But maybe I'm going to have, so this will trigger some interest. This is going to be very controversial, what I show. And I know some of you will want to argue with me, and that'll be great. I'm just kidding, it won't be. It's just some comments I have. Okay, let's start. Why do we have handouts? Do y'all ever have handouts in a class, in a Bible class? Adult classes? Yes?
To give the students, one, a chance to look at it at their own pace ahead of time.
Ahead.
Keep it in mind, so that when they come to class, they are ready to absorb what the
Good.
teacher has presented, either to agree or maybe challenge if you.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Right, you get that? Something you can do in advance. Does that accelerate to some extent what you can do in class? If they do it, but still, yes.
go choker.
Yeah. Any other purpose for a handout? A handout? Yes.
You can put more information on there than what you're actually planning to cover. So
Okay.
like if you're
Yeah.
wanting to reference different scriptures, but you don't have time to go to all of them, you
Right.
can list them out.
Or you don't even know which ones might be the best in the moment. There's some flexibility there. So hers is before, yours is kind of after. In a way, it's a reference. You'll still have all these. If we don't get to them all, you can look at them later. And of course, they will, math teacher thing. Is that going to be on the test? That's all I remember that. But
Well,
just,
based upon what Katie said, you want interaction with your students, or everybody, not necessarily
Right.
students.
right.
And that gives an opportunity that
Yep.
you've gotten everything in there,
Yep.
at least on paper.
Yep.
That you wanted to say, but you gave time
Good.
when there was interaction.
So I think you covered the third thing. Before, after, and then the during is in the middle. And that is, it's something you can use to expedite the activities you're going to do in class. Y'all have been doing that, I hope. These sheets that I gave you are I'm kind of following that. You can put the notes in, and for sure I've said, fill in the boxes in the flow of learning. You already have it, it's in your hand. You don't have to have it in advance. My favorite thing is to have half-sheet quizzes, because I can make a bunch of them really quick. And I actually go to the classroom before the class begins. I put one on every chair. So when people come in, they know, hey, answer these 6 questions. And I'm doing several things with that. First of all, I'm settling them down, getting them serious. I'm getting their heart rate up a little bit, back into the topic, right? In some ways, I might be reviewing, hopefully saving a little time and going through what we covered last time. I may be a pre-quiz to say, do you even know these answers? That will help me know where to start. You see, there are a lot of advantages in that. Plus, I don't get charged time for that. It's all before class. Anyway, yeah, you guys got them. Pre-class prep, right? And I'll say a little bit more about this in a minute. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'll just say it all now. How many members actually do their lessons when they're handed out beforehand? Give me a percent. And I guess you have to say, okay, in the adult class, how many? You high school kids don't listen to this. How many in the adult class actually prepare their lesson sheet before they come, or even bring, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that.
You're optimistic to say 30%?
Probably is, yeah. Not many. Now, I think it's wrong to think of that as a premise rather than just a fact. It is a fact, probably. But is there any way we could improve that? It's one of my goals, by the way. You remember the 4th goal? You're a disciple. That teacher has put some time, and she thinks that this is worth doing to help with the learning process. And what are you going to do in submission to that authority that you've delegated to this teacher?
Oh, and also to encourage the teacher.
What's that?
To me, to encourage the teacher, the least I can do is to do the lesson.
Yeah, I think so. And it's hard, but I think it's a matter of priority. You know that. It's like anything. And guess what? Once you do it a few times, this is hard to believe, guess what will happen? It becomes a habit. You're getting to the 6th step down. You all know what I mean. Set aside a time. And maybe as families, we say to the kids, while I'm doing my lesson, you do yours, and that could be part of it as well. I have an elder friend, I won't say where, but he had the bright idea that we're upside down. The church is not charged with teaching all the kids the Bible. That's the parents' job. So let's turn everything upside down. Let's send the lessons home for the parents to teach, and we'll just review in the Bible class. You thought about that? Like I'd spent all this time on this material, now I prepare an instructional aid. Not that we ever homeschool other things or anything, but never mind that. But let's flip it upside down and send the lessons home. The parents will teach it every day. Come to the building, we'll just review and reinforce and help them with the assignment for the next lesson. Man, did he get shot down. But sorry for that. But I mean, think of it that way. And maybe that's the way, in some ideal sense, this ought to be working, but it doesn't, I know. But okay, so there you are. So yeah, I think we shouldn't presume that nobody's ever going to do their lessons, so why even hand it out? First of all, and I'm just going to say it the way it is, there are ladies, I'm sorry, at Embry Hills, they will say, where is the material? Where's the assignment? And I will get calls, what did you mean by question 3? And we'll talk about it in class, really, it's okay, But they are so dedicated with preparing it's a habit and a conviction on their part. Oh, I wish we could all be that way. I think I mentioned last night, lately I've decided I've tried to start my little habit cycle, right? Especially in the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy. It's so easy to show up unprepared for that material, if you haven't looked at it, but yeah.
I think it also is important that the things that you're doing to prepare are actually going to benefit.
You mean
actual class.
they're relevant to the class?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I think sometimes you can get things ahead of time.
Right.
And you then, when you're in the class, see
It
that
never
they're
comes
not-
up, why did I even study
Right.
that?
And so
Right.
I think that
I'm almost prepared to quibble with you, but not right this minute.
that's fine.
Because I wish it were true, and this is in theory but never in practice, that what happens in the class is not the same as what you did at home, but builds on it.
Yes.
Now, your point is if I don't even see a relevance, maybe I'm not incentivized to do it. I think that's the idea, yeah.
I think I was gonna probably make a similar point that I agree with that, but I also, if the handout is the exact material that's taught in class, that can make for a very boring.
Especially for those who have done it,
Yes.
right? And maybe only for those who've done it, right?
Disincentivized to do
Good.
it.
Y'all hear all this? This is a great discussion, yes.
That's kind of been my question too. It seems like things have changed since, well.
The good old days, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've tried different things when it feels like, because I feel bad for the kids that have.
I know.
Gone through the lesson and then they have
Right,
this-
and that's another version of the question, what if you got different abilities? You got different support at home.
So I've tried to
And,
think
yeah.
like
Yeah.
different, okay, you don't really have a real big assignment at home.
Yeah,
Just watch this
right,
video or,
Right.
Like.
Or something, yeah.
Like something.
Right.
So that they can have the right mindset.
Sure.
But it's hard to
Yeah.
know what to.
well, I agree with my elder friend, but, that's why we make the big bucks as Bible teachers, is that there's hard problems, and we got to figure, creative ways. But I did add, it's compatible with their study habits and skills. So, for example, in an adult class, if nobody's getting it done, maybe you need to kind of reduce what you're asking them to do and make it as easy. And I'll show you how you might do that in just a minute. So it isn't a big deal. I have to get out 14 reference books and, spend a lot of time. Maybe I can actually do it on my tablet. It's available online on PDF, and all I got to do is take my stylus and, connect some dots or something like that. There are things you can do that would make it easier, kind of meet them in the middle. Oh, more hands? Yes.
One thing to remember with handouts is if we give a handout, not everyone will probably do it.
Yes.
If we don't give a handout, nobody has an opportunity.
I like that. I mean, there's some benefit in there. That's right. But you got to deal with the fact that do you assume everybody's done it, or you assume nobody's done it, and so you're back to kind of somewhere in the middle. I think the most important use I make is to expedite in-class activities, right? And that is, there it is. Everybody gets it. I don't have to hand out something or something. They have something to write on. Now, that presumes people bring writing instruments, right? I have a little joke when I do these summer camps with the boys. I say, there's a tribe in Israel that was praised for bringing writing instruments to a battle. I don't know if you know who that is or not. And I'll leave it to them to solve for the week. And you got to bring me the Bible reference if you can figure that out. But it's true. Nice trivia question. But listen, bring your weapons to the Bible class. That is, bring your writing instruments. I always think of I'm back on goal 4 now. I'm still trying to motivate all of us to be better students. I don't have a real good analogy, but this is the best I've come up with. Let's suppose I am, I'm nearing the end of life. I have some estate planning to do, right? And I decide I'm going to go to one of those courses. You pay for it, right? To go and learn about estate planning. What are the new laws? What are the regulations? What's the wise thing to do in different income brackets? When do you need to get it done? What are the legal processes? How much is it going to cost to pay to get it done? You know what I mean? Important, very important to me. More important maybe every week. But would I go to that without anything to write with? And if I sat down in that class and they didn't give me any material to hold, to take away from the class, you know what I mean? Or if something wasn't clear, I'd say, well, that wasn't very clear, and just sit there. Y'all see what I'm saying? Does that work as a metaphor, at least an illustration? No, even as adult learners, even if I haven't gone to a college class in 50 years, which is true, no, I would be eager, right? I'd be equipped, I'd be attentive, I'd be compliant if they said, so do this exercise on this page right here, and I think you can see how you could calculate this for your situation. Okay, yes, okay, I'll do that. So I don't know, we're just not as diligent that way. Okay, so there's that. Take-home record for class activities. That was your point. We didn't get to cover it, especially in adult class, especially if it's a kind of a technical subject, evidences or something like that. Hey, here's some YouTube videos that are really good. You should watch these. We're not going to watch them in class, but there they are. There are links in the text. You can do that. So at home references. All right, what would you send as a take-home? This is the template that we've pretty much settled on in our workshop as something that people can take home in advance. What I like to do is make a whole book and have it in the beginning of the course. Here it is. All the lessons are there. If you're out of town, do the lesson. Come back next time with that. And by the way, now you can go online and hear the recording of all of our Bible classes. So you can do that. And for me, that's part of my resolution, is I'm out of town on a weekend, like tomorrow. But I've committed to go back and listen to the class and do the studying and so on. Okay, so take a look at this lesson sheet. And by the way, you can see it, another one. This is, I think, one of the ones that I didn't do it. One of the teachers did on 1 Timothy 2. What's 1 Timothy 2 again? The title? The chapter? Men and women. Does he say that in there? Yeah, men and women. Okay, this would be on page 15, page 7? No,
11.
yeah, it's not the same thing in each one. Yeah. Oh, 7 has the diagram I'm about to show you, doesn't it? Yes, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So here's what we do to try to do that. First of all, write the objectives. Y'all know what an objective is, right? It's a measurable behavior change that can be accomplished during the class period in the student, right? So I said this yesterday, is it appropriate to share objectives with the students? Yes, it's a contract in some ways. And if they know what they are, they can help me accomplish them as a teacher. Oh, I see, that's one of the objectives. Yeah, I better pay attention when he mentions that. So in this case, list 3 characteristics of a good prayer and at least 1 characteristic of a good prayer giver. Is that a good objective for this material? All right, so I've done that. And now I have a guide for reading the text. So I have a brief outline. Right? So if you want to kind of quickly say what's in this text, I can look at that outline. It's also an index for the questions below. So you see the questions have part A, part B, and they map to the outline. So if I ask a question, what 4 things should be made for all men, in question A1, you see that? I go up to the outline and I know what verses to look at. But what else have we done to make it so easy to answer these questions? It's right there. You don't even have to get out your Bible. You can, in fact, you don't even have to print on the page. You can just circle the question and draw a line up to the text, and you're done. Seconds. And it's so easy, but you've seen the text and you've done, you've answered the question. So that's a good thing to do. And then, so they're organized by those entries there. Now, he doesn't have it, but you'll see in my lesson tomorrow I do have it. And that is, okay, that's factual stuff, right? The text questions, may have a little bit of analysis, but for the most part, it's just find the stuff in the verse. It's not quite fill in the blank, but it's not too far from that. But I do want to think and analyze that information a little bit. So, here, look, notice the way this question is worded. Do you think, what does that allow? Do you think? What's the importance of that? Well, you think, that's right. But there's something else implied in that. There might not be a specific right answer. I just want you to say, is it possible, or what's the evidence for it? So it's an analysis kind of thing. That lifting up holy hands refers to the physical posture, or is it something, you see that question? Now, what I've encouraged the guys to do, and mostly consistent, is under thought and analysis right there, I think it's important to write right there, out beside where it says thought and analysis, write, do not try this at home, or something like that, you know, or do this at home and prepare for an in-class discussion. Now I'm linking this to something we are really going to talk about. If you thought about that, will help us. But I'm kind of being real explicit. You don't have to do this. You can wait till class. We're going to cover it there. Or we are going to do it in class. You might want to be prepared that way. So that's another way to do it. And then, as always, we're trying to get down to how is my life going to be different? Application questions. What can you do on Tuesday that will reflect your observing all things whatsoever you've commanded, so you could do there. Okay. Now, is that the order we're going to cover it in class necessarily? No, it doesn't have to be. And in fact, one of the things that we've kind of practiced on is that you cover a little bit of the text and you jump right down to application and start talking about changing your life. Then go back and cover, what would be the value in doing that instead of covering the text and waiting to the very end to cover the applications? You know the answer. Easy, yeah. Because it's after the first bell. It's too late, right? The parents are up getting their kids from the preschool class, you know, and everybody else is packing their Bibles up. It's very helpful to do, I call it an iterative approach, where you say, here's a verse, let's push through analysis into the application, and then go back and take another section. Y'all understand that? So now, I'm going to run out of time. That's just the law of physics, I think. So at least I've gotten 2 or 3 of the applications done. And if I'm clever, I'll even do them out of order so that the most important ones get done early on, or maybe the middle of the class period. Y'all with me on that? I'm taking too long. Okay, so there we are. I think we've done a bunch of these. And now I want to talk about activities. First of all, here's a suggested class period structure. I think you want an attention getter. Unfortunately, we tend to review, at least I do, and that's a lecture a lot of times. So find some activity to review, a quiz or a matching or a group, something where people hear themselves talk and they get into the topic, but it's not where they can just sit there and start to slowly sink into the padded pew, you know. And then list the objectives, an introduction. That, unfortunately, often is a lecture type format. Review where you are, talk about the outline, cover the content, and then get the application conclusion. And you see what I mean by this could be iterative, as opposed to just do everything factual and then get to the application. All right, I'm going very fast. Here's your assignment. We've already covered that. What are some activities? Okay, what do we got, till 4? Is that right? Okay, we got to get done by 3:30. 4 alternate activities. Have we done anything in here besides just listen to me lecture? Maybe we could list some of those. What are some techniques we've used here for class activity involvement, learning, reinforcement, assessment, feedback from, what have we done?
Side versus side.
Yeah, you noticed that, right. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have time to talk about it. But do you sense it? I mean, if I can put a little competition and dynamics into it, plus it gives each side time to think, you know, I think it's kind of a fun way to do it, yeah. Especially if it's kind of brainstorming type thing. Yep, what else? Another technique? Flashcards. Yes, flashcards.
The exercises you've given us to work on, like at the beginning of each session.
Yes, go find this information, or look at these texts, and So that's kind of like, some of it could just be individual study, analysis. Others would be think, pair, share, as we learned the term. I've just learned that, but the idea there has the advantage of, first of all, personal deliberation, and your individual brain cells are involved, which helps with memory and a bunch of other things. Then you pair up with somebody and you share that. That is, you're articulating that. You hear yourself talk and you hear them talk, so it reinforces it. And then the third step is an outbrief, where everybody gets to kind of, and they're more confident because they've tried it out with their partner. You know, they're free to say it because, hey, or what I like best of all is, well, what she said was, you know, right, that's a good thing. I mean, that means it's from one person to another and then to everybody, so that's good. Let's see, class pre-plan. So I'll just talk about, did Jesus use various teaching techniques? All right. And for the sake of time, I would love to do the this side, that side again, because I think there's just tons of examples. And you probably have better ones than I do, but I'm just going to show you some. So many I had to put the title sideways on the chart. How about student discovery? In other words, I asked you a question and you go try to find the answer. The baptism of John, who is it from? Did Jesus tell them who it was from? No. In fact, he had another question he didn't answer as a result of their not. What's written in the law? How do you read it? Well, which is easier to say? Your sins are forgiven, or take up your bed and walk? What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? And I want you to think about one of the Psalms as you answer that question, right? Case study. I use case studies a lot when I'm maybe in a topical study and I'm trying to deal with specific personal problems. I mean, Norm's case about the habitual use of smart devices as a rabbit, you called it a rabbit hole, of attention and energy. You know, I think you could write a fairly detailed case about that. And somehow, well, I'll call it in just a minute, but okay, here's a long story about a man who got robbed and so on. And he got help by somebody, turned out to be a Samaritan. Who do you think proved to be the neighbor to this guy? That's a long story to get to that point, right? What do you think? A certain man had 2 sons, and he came to the first and said, go work, right? Or here's another man had 2 sons, and the younger said, give me my inheritance, right? What a man of you, if he has 100 sheep and he loses one of them, what is he going to do? What do you do? And I think there's a thing called the Nathan effect, and you know why I call it that probably, and that is we are so quick to recognize the problems in other people, right? It's the mote and the beam thing. Did David even hesitate for a moment to know what to do with that man who'd taken that poor man's little sheep and used it to feed his guests? Man, he was going to kill the guy. Isn't it funny how we can see things in other people? So some ways case studies can be a third-party safe way to say, man, that guy's in trouble, when maybe I might be in trouble the same way, or something like that. And I think, now those are hard. They're difficult to write, but they can be very powerful as you get way down the flow of learning. Because you're basically saying, okay, I'm not that guy, but if I was, then I ought to do this. You see, I'm pretty much down to how I should apply this. And we can kind of think about, well, how'd you help him? It's too hard for him. Well, he should talk to his friends. Well, he should, cut off this activity. Or so you start to come up with solutions in a third-party sense, in a Nathan effect, and so on. So feedback, where the students must answer. What were you arguing about on the road? Jesus could have said, I know what you're talking about. But no, he made them confess. Who do men say that I am? And then, who do you say that I am? Do you want to go away also? John, at the feeding of the 5,000. Visual aids. Jesus used visual aids. He didn't have PowerPoint. I know that's a shocker, but he didn't have PowerPoint. What did he say? Bring me a denarius that I may see it. What was the point of that? He took a little child and he set it in his midst. And I'm thinking that if he's holding a baby, I don't know what age the child would be, and saying, you need to become like this little child. Or this needs to be the aspiration you have, is to care for a little one like this. That's what the kingdom is about. Powerful. And seeing from afar a fig tree having leaves, Rabbi, look, the fig tree, which you see the visual aid he created himself. You get the idea. So I can say more about that. So here are some potential activities. Very quickly, what are the pros and cons? And here's my football play analogy. every activity, if y'all are engineers, you'll know what I mean by this. Every activity is a trade. That is, you're giving up something, usually class time, hoping to gain something else. Better learning, right? Better retention, memory. You see what I mean? Or more, reaching more of the class, where some groups got it, but the other class are not getting there, so I'm gonna take a little bit more time with this activity, maybe by grouping them up to accomplish that. Do y'all see that? So I am not saying to you, you have to use this one, you have to use that one, this one's the best. None of them the best. All of them have cost. And normally it's time is the worst cost, but you got to decide, is it worth the time to do it or not? And that's the point of the class planning activity, and that you think through, no, this group exercise, this case study is going to take half the class period. Once we read it, once they talk about it for several minutes, and once we process it, it's going to be, that's 10 minutes each, that's going to be half the class period or more. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? You got to decide. And I'm not telling you have to, but it seems to me depending on the depth of learning and all of that. So I'll see what I'm getting at. So here's some thoughts. You can think of pros and cons. Filling out a question sheet before class. It's fast. It doesn't use any class time. What are the cons? Most people won't do it, at least in an auditorium class, right? Checking question sheets and answers in class. You can do that with the kids. Let me see your lesson sheet. Did you fill it in or not, right? You know, I can think of an obvious con in an adult class. You offend half the church or something, but anyway. A teacher lecture. What are the pros of teacher lecture? I'm doing it right now. Probably the worst example. It's quick, right? Well, I don't stop. No questions allowed. We're in a hurry. We're out of time. What's the cons? Zoning out. Yeah, right. Yeah. He doesn't want me to answer. I don't even need to pay attention because he's not going to ask any questions. You'll see that they're, all right. Open questions to the whole group. Directed questions to individuals, right? Flora, what's the answer to that question? Y'all see there's some cons to that, but maybe in some setting that might be a good thing to do. I'm sorry to disturb you. How about a pop quiz over previous material? There are pros to that, cons to that. It takes time. People already know it. It's boring to them, etc. Pop quiz over just covered material. Planned exam. I do that in the junior high and high school classes. I tell them from the first day. In fact, usually I show them the exam in the very first class period and say, you're going to take this at the end. And boy, I've had some classes that just ate that up. And they even got together before the last class period and studied together. Can you imagine that in a Bible class? And I had 3 of them ace it. I mean, it was amazing. And it was a hard test. I sometimes bring that to show everybody because I was really proud of that class. It actually was not high school. It was 7, 8, 9. Student recitation, flashcards, playing a game with competing teams. I think the cons are pretty high there. That's just my experience. I don't know. Maybe if you got used to playing the game and you could set it up quickly. But anyway, acting out a Bible story. I'm kind of high on that one in the younger kids' ages because it's tactile. It burns a few calories. It puts the thing more in their memory. But it takes time. Role playing. For example, maybe an evangelism course, and I'm going to pretend to be a Calvinist, and you try to talk to me. I think that's going to take a lot of class time, but it might be very valuable. Skill building. Individual reports. Think, pair, share with an outbrief. Discussing questions in small groups. Case studies. And I mean, ideally, they would read it beforehand, and they'd be so absorbed, yeah, this is interesting. I can't wait to hear or it could be you discuss it in class. Watch a video. I mentioned this because, you know, the Bible, what's it called? Bible Project. Do y'all ever watch any of those on your own? You ever watch them in class? Do y'all ever see them in the Bible class? Yeah, they're good. I mean, they're quick, 7, 8 minutes. It's a nice overview, very graphical. Some of them are error. I mean, there's stuff in there that's not right. They're kind of a premillennialist background. Some of the Old Testament books, I think, are interpreted wrong. One way I've used that in the junior high, I said, listen, if we get through this material and y'all can do all this, we'll watch the Bible Project video. Isn't that funny? Where a video is kind of instead of a tool for teaching, it's a reward. and they like it. I mean, it's good. Any comments or questions on anything? Why are you laughing?
That's opening a can of worms.
Thank you. I'm glad she said it, I didn't, but I was about to say it, just so you know. I don't like that. Because, for one thing, it reminds me of the old days where we read verse 1 and I say, does anybody have any comments on anything? Maybe not even narrowed down to this verse we've just read. You know what I mean? Where we talked about the authority is the focus. I'm trying to get somewhere, a point that I have tried to think of as the best value for the class. And especially if you have a time budget, and especially if you're behind, just the stopping and saying any other comments or questions about anything we've talked about. I know that has an air of openness, but I shouldn't be, I'm too opinionated about that. I sometimes even find myself about to say it, but what I actually mean is I'm ready to move on to the next topic. So maybe I should just say that. Okay, thank you for laughing. That was, all right, so here we are. And I would just say that a lot of these learning and teaching activities apply to different pieces of the learning process. I think you get the point of this chart. If you're really trying to change somebody's conviction, a case study, you probably need to do something like that. That's linear, that's deep, or something like that. Whereas if you're just trying to memorize, you don't need that kind of complicated thing. So that's the idea of this chart. Show you some pictures. You see there's Ryan right there, who now lives in Elmira, but what's he got on the overhead? Got a quiz. These are from different classrooms at home. That's Ben Hall there. He's giving them a quiz. That's the Spanish or bilingual class, actually. They've got their exams on their sheets, on their seats when they come in. This is Russ, one of our elders. He's showing the goals for the class at the beginning of every class period. That's part of what he does. Remember, why are we doing this? And then one story I wanted to tell you is, you can see the date, I think. You can go online if you want to and watch this video. It was at Embry Hills in 2025, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago. And I was supposed to teach 1st and 2nd Peter, and my co-teacher was Brigham Eubanks. That's him there, if you know Brigham or not. Great guy, good student, very good student. He's actually was a professional teacher as well. I couldn't be there the first class period. I was off somewhere. And I said, Brigham, I don't want you to say anything to the class. I just want to overview 1st and 2nd Peter, and I want the class to do that. And I said, you can blame me if you want, which he didn't. In fact, he didn't even tell the class that I told him to do it. But I said, here's what I want you to do. You give out this worksheet in which the class is supposed to come up with 5-word titles for every chapter in 1st and 2nd Peter, and pick the verse that's the most expressive of that. In the auditorium, in groups, right? And remember, we have 3 or 4 classes somewhere else. So the auditorium is pretty sparsely, kind of like this. And now take out another third or half, because they're all going to a side study class. And, there's spread out everywhere. I said, I don't want you to say anything. You hand out these forms. You appoint leaders for each of the groups. Have them fill it out for the group. At the end of the class period, take them up. No hints, no help. Spend the whole class period self-service overview of 1st and 2nd Peter, right? And we did something a little bit like that. I had in the assignment sheet. How do you think that went? So I wasn't there, but I went back later and pulled the video up of the class, and this is what it looked like. Okay, what do you see in the picture? Well, first of all, what's the teacher doing? He's not even in the picture. He was just wandering around. You know what I mean? I think he was maybe hoping people would get busier if he got near their group or something, right? And you do see there's lots of empty space. We have 4 rows. You probably can't see all the empty space in the picture. And of course, most of the people were in the back. Well, that's where the groups were too. You can kind of see the ones that were there. And anyway, that's an actual screen capture from the video in the auditorium of groups trying to understand 1st, 2nd Peter on their own by summarizing the chapters. And they turned them in, and I pulled them in a database and did word clouds and kind of reinforced them. They did great. Those were great answers. And so anyway, that's that was the assignment sheet that they had to fill out. They had the whole class period to do it, and so when it was over, then that was the end of the class period. Okay, is it possible to do some different techniques, even in a strange auditorium with very few people? I think that's an existence proof. We did it again later where I took the blame, but anyway. All right, so here are some other ideas we can talk about if you like. Every activity is a trade. There's open discussions, but I think you need to manage that. And I would just say to you all, I have never in this whole weekend said, stop talking about that, or that's not on topic. These have been excellent contributions. And that's the assessment as a teacher. Is this moving me toward my goal, or is it not? And if it's not, you've got to find ways to do that. And it's hard sometimes. And you haven't seen it, but there's things like body language you can use, which is you can turn away and start doing this, or here's a good one. While somebody's talking. I mean, not to be rude, but you get the idea. There may be ways to manage the discussion. Pairwise or group discussions and visual aids. I won't go into the cognitive theory behind that, except to say it's hard to read and listen to English language at the same time, even though one's coming through your eyes and one's coming through your ears. Y'all aware of that? Wives know that if their husbands are, used to say reading the paper, but they don't do that anymore, but you know what I mean? Or you can drive a car and listen to the radio, but you can't read a newspaper and listen to the radio. You understand what I mean? So one error, which I make, and this chart's probably a good example, is I put a whole bunch of words on the screen and then I keep talking, and what's happening? Well, I don't know. You're doing one or the other. You're reading the chart or you're listening to me. So be careful. What's really good are pictures, spatial things. And that could be one-word icons like before and after, good and bad, a timeline, a map, visual things that are spatial, not verbal. And so that's my advice about that. Okay. Let's keep on that. Time management. I think you should have a schedule. Would it be okay to share that schedule with the class period? A thing I like to do, especially in the kids class, I said, you know what, at 20 after, you're my alarm clock. And it's usually a smart aleck kid who loves to be, disruptive. I said, you're my alarm clock. At 20 after, you stop me. Oh man, what a great assignment. Oh, I can't get to stop the teacher. What's the point of that though? Really, basically I'm saying I have a time limit and you guys got to help me with that. And so when that time comes, we have to have gone through what we've got, because what happens after that's very important. And so you can do that. Could I do that in a class like this? Probably could. But the other thing is, I might actually show you my schedule and work with that. Make every exercise efficient, of course. That means printed worksheets, call out time warnings. We've got 2 minutes left so that you're not going on and on. Someone does something that helps you move along, you recognize that. I think I've covered all these things. All right, these are just odds and ends. We can talk some more about it. It's usually interesting if you have a lot more time to do that. In our teaching workshops, we actually ask the guys to turn in their plan. And that would be shown in the red there. So at 3 minutes, his quiz and intro is over. At 5, the prayer is completed. At 10 minutes, the review is finished. Factual questions are over at 15 after. You'll see how that works in this graph. And then as the class happens, what happens? Well, almost always it looks like that, which means we did pretty well for a few minutes. We got into the questions and the map exercises, and the review and the factual questions, and the teacher could not control himself. That's what's happening to me right this minute. And so you end up, and guess what we shortchanged, at the end, was often the very most important application and so on. So, all right, could you work on this for 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll have a 5-minute out brief or so. And I'd like to just hear the kinds of things you would do in your class, the activities that will help to accomplish your objectives. Oh, I need to hear the objectives too. So take a look at that. Sorry, I keep saying one last thing. The lesson sheet for tomorrow morning's Bible study is on page 11. No, it's not. It's on page 13. I need to keep my glasses on. You see, I've tried to follow the format there It's on page 12 and 13, opening. You see that? That's for tomorrow morning. That's an assignment. And I've shown you in here, some of them say prepare before class. And that would be interpreted to mean prepare before class. And then under thought questions analysis, that would be you can prepare or not, but we're going to talk about those in class. That will be for preparation for a discussion in class. And then the application questions, those are for discussion in class. This will help me do that. And also for a record for later, you can take that home and spend more time on that if you like. All right, that's preparation for tomorrow. And notice I've written objectives. So this is a little bit, I mean, not that it's perfect, but this would be a pattern for what I would like you to do. Although don't copy this. This is my version of the assignment for tomorrow. Okay, let's work on it for maybe 10 minutes and have a little bit of an out brief at the end. About 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to ask for volunteers again to share some of what you've done. Okay, I know you didn't get done, and I almost feel like I need to apologize. This is kind of like the skill we were working toward, is to be able to build a class period plan. I probably overemphasized some of the theoretical things. But and just a little background, we do this about every 3 years at home with the young guys. I say young, they're college and a little older. And we develop these plans. We dry run them with one another, planning the class period, the schedule, the activities, the handouts, those kind of things. We teach it in a live, whoever wants to can come, kind of a class, and then we critique each other when we're done. We say, I make the little graph of the time, failures, and then we talk about what happened and when this happened and how did you feel about this or that. And that's really where the real learning occurs, where you've tried it and you've done it. You've run the play actually in a real scrimmage, and you see how did that work, and start fine-tuning the plan and the skills that you have. I would encourage you to do that as a church. Maybe there's some one of the men here who would take on the task of let's do a workshop. Let's pick a book, Colossians, 1st, 2nd Peter. Something not too complicated, but meaty enough that you could divide into a certain number of lessons. Have a lot of men who haven't taught before. Maybe teach their very first class period. Plan it, use some of these templates maybe as a kind of a way to get that planning done. Teach it, and then talk to each other, honestly, in a private setting, of course, after church on a Wednesday night is what we usually do, and talk about getting better. So expand your teaching roster. We've done similar for the women, and I'm not as aware on how that goes, because usually we have the women who are kind of experts in the various ages will conduct that. But I think a similar thing, training some of the younger women to be teachers in the kids' classes, that kind of thing. I think that's where you'll grow. Listening to me this weekend, I hope it's been interesting. Maybe it's a little bit motivational, but I think practice and doing it, running the football players is probably where that progress would be. That was the point of this exercise. Now, with just a few minutes left, would anybody volunteer to read us one of your objectives, your class period learning objectives? Remember, objectives measurable in the class period. Read one, just for fun. You're looking at one like you want to read it. You mind? Yes, go.
List the challenges and rewards associated with becoming a Christian.
Okay. Now, do you have a list in mind that you're going to present during the class?
Probably.
So that is a measurable thing, but I always think of an objective as a place where I know exactly what I want them to be able to say. Now, maybe that's too specific, but if they have that, then they can maybe fill in the blanks for more of what's my personal version of that. And that's more in the category of goals. But also, I always like it to be tied to the text somehow. And I know that is, but you might even frame it to say, thinking about the farmer, thinking about the athlete, what are challenges that we would face that are similar to what an athlete might face? And I have in mind, we're going to work on these, maybe in groups, we're going to come up with ways. In fact, one of the artifacts I put up there, I didn't develop that. One of the teachers, his exercise was, let's just think about athletic training. Are there some things or principles that Paul is probably referring to in, the idea of competing by the rules or with discipline and so on? And so it was just a brainstorm in class, the idea, of course, this was a list he was hoping to get to that would say, think about, in fact, Paul in 1 Corinthians 8 uses that metaphor, right? They run to win. And they're disciplined in all areas of their life, he says. And so there's a cross-reference there to do that. Yeah, Terry?
Well, first of all, I was probably the only one in here that was so confused because I was only on 10 working my head off and then turned over.
Sorry.
Oh, he's in second too.
Oh,
But it still applies. So my thing was the goals were to understand first and second greatest commandments.
understand what?
First and second greatest commandments.
Okay.
That's going to be the goal.
I would probably not say understand, but I would say repeat them,
Correct.
right?
Well,
And is this a kid's class? Is this a kid's class?
For all ages to understand what those.
Okay,
And, because we're going to see it, the objectives is to have changed or modified habitual living style.
okay.
Daily or regular behavior, okay? Because this is applying to me at this stage of my life.
Yeah. Those are great.
Activities-
That's a great goal. You won't be able to measure it.
Activities used would be to plan to help for the class to come up with their own things of helping me to learn to love God more. And also to do things to help me love my neighbor more. And then you asked for the period. So I got 5 minutes of prayer to understand God's word the way he intended. That's always what I always start with any class. 15 minutes would be lessons and verses from the Bible, including your 2 Timothy 2. Pull out those different verses about all the different ones. And 10 minutes of discussion of how we're going to implement that, and then plans, the last 10 minutes, plans for working out, each person come up with their own ideas of how, for prayer, meditation, study, about learning to love God more. And then, what am I going to do this week that I'm implementing teaching me to love my neighbor.
Oh,
That's
listen to that last thing she said. I wish we could end all of our class periods with some type of a written commitment that I'm going to do this next week. And I've even dreamed of having a thing where, like in some type of an Alcoholics Anonymous or something, you turn to the person next to you and you say, Mike, you call me on Wednesday and you ask me if I've done this or not, right? And you give me something and I'm gonna call you. That's changing lives. I think that's pushing through this habit-breaking things, yeah.
But with
yeah.
that kind of thing, I will push back a little bit because like each person of us is different and we're all useful in the body. One person is a planner and they have to stay. My sister-in-law has a list every night. It's how Joan gets everything done. Me, I'm an impulsive person. You ask me to come over, sit with this person or whatever, sure. I don't have any real plans today. But the thing is, together, this body at Rock
Sure.
gets it.
I think that's right. And everyone's personal applications will be different. Can we have another one? Yes.
Mine was for 4th and 5th grade, and I just said, list the images of God's workers from verses 1 to 7, and explain the metaphor and what ways that they're alike, like how the
Yeah.
metaphor fits.
Are those measurable? Are they rooted in the text? Are they aiming toward a life change? Yeah, you can,
And
again.
tie it into being a good worker in chapter 2, verse 15. So I would start with prayer, of course, and then read chapter 2, verse 15, and say we're going to look at 3 ways that we can be a better worker, approved by God. And then split the class up in groups and give somebody the job to figure out the soldier, somebody the job to figure
Oh,
out the...
so each group would work on a different,
But then
Right.
stop them after about 8 minutes. And you might even put passages from other...
related, like the
related
1 Corinthians
passages
8,
about
yeah,
soldiers
1 Corinthians
or
9, yeah.
Yeah. And then stop them and give them each, like, time to present their
Mhm.
image,
Mhm.
and where other kids can listen to them. or
So
check them out.
she's brought up something I didn't mention, but I've always wrestled with it, and I don't know the right answer. And that is, do I give everybody in all the groups, or if it's groups, or every student, the same assignment? Or do I let each group work on a different part?
Both ways work.
There are pros and cons to both. Did I mention that everything's a trade, right? You get more done in a sense, but then each student has only gained expertise in their area. And often the outbrief, especially if it's the group before you present, what am I doing? I'm getting ready to present, so I'm not as attentive. So that's one downside. Same time, you will have the students presenting material, even if it's new to the others. There's great value in that, hearing it from a student and not from the teacher all the time, especially if they've discovered it themselves. So,
And then end with the application of what can you do better to be more
okay,
like one of them.
I love that ending, same as Terry's. If we don't go out being different somehow, making a resolution, I'm not sure we're doing. Okay, one more. And I'm sure somebody has what they think is the very best objectives of all. One thing is, if you look at my objectives, I don't guess you copied mine. Maybe that's why I liked her so much, is because look at my objectives on that lesson page, you'll see. But they're very similar, yeah.
I'll share mine, but I will say that mine is, like, it's using text. But
Yes? Using text, what do you mean?
Like, it's not hyper text centered.
Okay. What age group?
So probably high school.
Okay.
So my goals are being patient with difficult people.
These are life changes.
Yes.
They want to be better. You can't measure it.
Yes.
You don't have a patient-o-meter.
And then how to gently teach those who oppose me. So those are my goals for.
Life change, yep.
Yeah. So objectives, and so these are all going to be things that we talk about during the class.
Sure.
Give 3 examples of how to be patient with a difficult person. Recite your personal mantra for how to view others who disagree with me.
Wow. You're going to develop that in class?
Yes.
These are words that you can, a mantra means
Tell
you've
myself.
memorized it, yeah,
Yes.
right.
And then give 3 gentle responses to hostile, anti-truth comments or interactions. So my class period will start off with graffiti wall, which we all know and love that I do. No, just kidding. Where I put up a big paper and they have to basically define a difficult person. So when they walk in, they're going to write down attributes of a difficult person
Yeah,
on this thing.
yeah.
So
Every student
when they
contributes
walk in,
somehow,
yeah.
right?
So then we discuss, and then we'll overview kind of what we're going to be talking about for the day. We'll review the text, which is talking about the.
That's the latter part of the second chapter,
Right.
right? You notice
and-
she's zeroing in on a particular part of the chapter.
Right.
Is that okay to leave some stuff out?
And their homework was
Right.
to actually read.
The whole thing, but still, yes. right.
And so then we're going to discuss what is our initial gut reaction to someone who
Yeah,
is
yeah.
difficult or is opposing the truth, and then what do we need to then keep in mind about people who are like this. And so we're going to, as a group, brainstorm what could this person be going through, which is making them difficult. What are common flaws in their thinking that maybe I share as well. So then we're going to construct this class mantra where we can say, this person is a child of God. I don't know what this person is going through.
They're not my enemy.
Right.
Yes, yeah.
And so then we'll write that up there. Everybody's gonna, get behind it and understand kind of what we need to remind ourselves when we're interacting with these people. I put in there that there would be a case study on maybe a Facebook commenter where maybe someone on social media is being openly hostile. I don't know if I would have time to do that. Timing is also my issue.
Mine too. One of the things we practice on is, okay, here's my list. In fact, you'll see in my plan, by the way, I've given you my class plan and schedule for tomorrow. I'm hoping y'all will help me make my budget, but there's no way I will. But I put an asterisk, and we always did that by one or two items that I'm going to omit, if, but hardly ever. I mean, yes, you will, but yes.
And then the final thing that we would be doing is we would brainstorm ways that we have either felt people be hostile towards us, or things that people have said to us
Sure.
that are maybe hostile. Have like 4 or 5 of those, give them big pieces of paper, send them off into a little group that.
Okay, I was just about to ask about that. If your class is bigger than about 10, you can't have everybody saying that, but you can have them say it to each other.
Yes.
Again, that sounds like what you're going to do.
Yeah, so you
Get in a
try
group,
to-
yep.
They come up with responses with how to gently respond to those.
In
comments.
pairs or in
Right,
something.
and they write them down on the paper, you stick them up on the wall, and you have a gallery walk where people can walk around.
And that's the outbrief kind of
Yes.
at the end of the class.
Yeah, and
Wow.
you can, people could write on and
Sure,
add on to the
sure.
posters of like, oh, I think you could do this or this.
Okay, that's activity. That is beautiful. It's way beyond what I would imagine a classroom. In my imaginary classroom, they're all still sitting, If they stand up, it's only because I made them move to the front or something, or separated two troublemakers. Yeah.
Might be a good opportunity to do role playing too.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the pairing thing is a little bit like that. At least they're saying, here's how I feel. I thought that was good. If I'm in that class, I'm not gonna tell the whole class how I feel, but I might tell one person, you know what I mean? So you get some of that pressure down. Did y'all get all that? Did you distinguish, there's a life change. You can't just go in and say, guys, we need to be calmer when we disagree with people. But you kind of work up to that with some pretty objective steps. I like the mantra idea. Listen, I need mantras, right? And maybe it's something like saying, man shall not live by bread alone. You'll know what I'm talking about? Man shall not live by bread alone. You know what I mean? I think that was a mantra. And when it's real hard and I'm real hungry and I'm really tempted, I just say, man shall not live by bread alone. And I'm remembering the Deuteronomy context, all of that, actually, Exodus. But okay, we're over time, so this is bonus.
Quickly say, this is really helpful because I think we can get into a rut where we do the same thing every
Right.
week. And you're likely to have more classroom engagement if you change things up, even just one different activity
Yes.
per week.
Right. Adults are sometimes disoriented if we change too much all of a sudden, but it is good for us. Let me say maybe a summary type thing. So you all are here. you hear what we're talking about. I think you even hear some people encouraging us to step out of our ordinary processes in class. One of the things in our workshop that I do for the guys that are going to teach, I do the introductory lesson, and then they rate me and do all that. But one of the things I say in the introductory lesson is, class, these are experimenters. These are teachers trying new things. Give them some space, support them, and somehow that gives them a little bit of license. I hope something like that will happen here. Whatever in the adult classroom, so if somebody tries something new, like says, talk to your neighbor, or maybe let's prepare a lesson, let's try it. You know what I mean? Give them some grace and let them make a mistake if that's where you think it's headed. But you know what I mean? Be cooperative, be innovative, see how that might work. Who was it? Yes, it was Colton Carson, whatever his name is, said to me yesterday. He always thinks of that verse, the sons of this world are wiser than the sons of light. Do you know why that's relevant? There are people in the world that know how to teach stuff really well, and somehow we're resistant to take that wisdom and use it for the most important teaching there is in the whole world, which includes involvement and reiteration and those kinds of things. I'm not encouraging to follow the wisdom of the world, nor was he, but I am saying let's use the best judgment we can in these authority roles God's given us. Do y'all remember our goals? Believe that teaching is a role of authority and responsibility, right? I forget the other two. I should remember them, know them by heart. But the fourth one is, let's all participate as disciples in cooperating with the teachers and their goals to change our lives. One of the third one was, let's do some new things in the class and try those out. Man, great ending. That was, yeah, thanks. All right, I'm done. I think, Mike, it's over to you.